Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to MX Bikes, where today we're going to play a replica version of the 2023 Chicagoland SMX race and talk about the race that happened over the weekend, went to it in real life, so got a little first-hand knowledge of some of the things that happened, more particularly the Jett Lawrence situation, which everyone seems to have an opinion on, and I figured I'd share mine as well. Before I start this though, do want to say this track is obviously not going to be an exact replica. This track that ARL, the Aerial Racing League, built was for a race that they did on Friday night before this race in real life had even happened. So they built it off of the track map that we were supposed to get for the Chicagoland race. So we can actually kind of compare what we ended up getting for the racetrack versus what they laid down here and what we were supposed to get going into the weekend, which I think is kind of cool. And I'll talk a little bit about that. And then as well, I'm also using these really cool new bikes in a little factory bike pack that was put out by Josh Mertens. And honestly, to me, these bikes are like a freaking cheat code. They're so easy to ride, so fun. Honestly, makes the game a little bit more playable for me because I'm definitely not very good at the game, but these make me feel a little bit more like a hero in that regard. So I'll link that into the description if you guys want to try that out for yourself. This track is a paid mod, so unfortunately if you want it, you have to pay for it. But yeah, we'll talk about it and play it along the way. So first of all, like I said, this is not a exact replica of the track that was actually raced on the weekend. Ended up being quite a bit different, as you can tell from what I'm playing right here. And there's a lot of reasons why. I think basically the main reason was they were surprised when they got to Chicagoland of some of the things about the facility, and that was one of the main reasons that a lot of things were changed. I think that there was always going to be a few things on the track that ended up getting changed anyway. That seems to be kind of the case with really any speedway race that they go to, and like ZMAX had a couple small changes but not too much, and then this one obviously had a lot of changes. What I hear was kind of the main reasons why though was they, I think, expected to be able to like have a lot more dirt that was usable, and it turns out that a lot of the dirt that they did use like at the actual facility, because they did bring in some dirt, but they were, I think, gonna pull and dig up some more dirt from like just off the facility, like behind the backstretch of the speedway and certain things like that. And it sounds like a lot of it was just generally too soft. A lot of this area gets a lot of rain, obviously, but then also pretty much the entire area around it was grass and not dirt. And so I think when you dig up kind of like grassy soil, it always tends to be a little bit more kind of mulchy, and so they couldn't make some jumps that they wanted to. There's never supposed to be like a big rhythm section or anything like that, so I saw some people saying like, oh, this is a really lame track, why didn't they have a rhythm section? There wasn't supposed to be, but there's definitely supposed to be a few more jumps, as you can obviously tell from this iteration of it. So in the end, they ended up making a very, very fast racetrack. Not a lot of turns. Like this entire sand switchback thing was ended up just being like one left-hand sand turn, and then it went little like, you know, kind of long straightaways back and forth on the infield before it ended up going the other way out this way. And I also heard that they were surprised to see how banked the speedway was when they got here, because obviously by this track map, the whoops were supposed to be on kind of like the embanked speedway part of the track. And I think they were surprised when they got there that it was as banked as it was. I think that's a little bit kind of a funny story because I don't know how you would know that a speedway has banking, but they do go to Atlanta Motor Speedway, and the tri-oval there does not have banking, so they are able to build on the concrete section. This one, they're a little bit surprised by that and had to change it. So there's definitely a few changes to the track that they made, but I still think it ended up being a pretty interesting racetrack because it was way more like man-made motocrossy than anything else, and a lot of guys said that they actually did enjoy that. A little bit of a change of pace from like the supercrossy kind of stuff that they had to do last week at Charlotte. So I thought it was overall pretty cool, the way that it worked out. I think it was maybe a little bit too high speed and some sketchy situations. Like they obviously put a wall jump in the rollers after Friday free practice, and they did that to slow the speeds down, but then the wall jump, they had to hit that with, you know, a lot of guys were running motocross suspension because it's almost a direct motocross track, and a massive wall jump in the middle of a motocross track with really soft suspension was a little bit sketchy. A couple guys almost went down pretty bad on that wall jump, and I don't know if they showed any of those, but there's a couple guys that went into him pretty fast. And I get it, just tell him, oh, don't do that, go slower or whatever. But it was a little sketchy, I think. And then some of the speeds coming back in from outside of the speedway. I mean, they were jumping so far in that little triple section. But I mean, I think all that stuff was mostly fine. And I think the riders did enjoy having a bit of a change of pace, like I said. So, yeah, cool track. And I think I actually like the one that we ended up with better than this one. Just because this one, to me, especially playing it with some buddies last night, feels really one-lined, especially like these sand switchbacks right here. Like, it just feels like there's not really many places you can go to try to set up a pass. And when you have really quick successive corners like these, it makes it way more difficult to even consider like a dive bomber or something like that, because it just happens so fast. Like, if you have a little bit longer straightaways, you can at least get up alongside the guy, maybe make something happen. So I think what we ended up with was ultimately probably the better version of the racetrack. All right, let's talk about the Jett Lawrence situation, because it's why you guys maybe clicked on this video. So what the thumbnail is, and a lot of people have opinions about it. So for those of you that don't know, Jett Lawrence won the Chicagoland SMX race, picked up the 50 points with it, but he did not win both motos. He went 1-2, and Ken Roczen won the second moto. He went 3-1. Chase Sexton went 2-3 for third. They were all three pretty much the class of the field. Aaron Plessinger was a little bit closer in the final moto, but they definitely had, I think, the upper hand on everybody else. And definitely in the second moto, Roczen and Jett had the upper hand on Chase. Chase said he went wrong with setup pretty much all day long, made another big change before the final moto, still didn't work, and that is ultimately what you kind of saw with him. But everyone is talking about the fact that Jett Lawrence waved Ken Roczen by with about 4 laps to go in the race. They're about, at the time, 12 seconds ahead of Chase Sexton, and he wasn't close. And Jett Lawrence did not need to beat Ken Roczen to win the overall. And in SMX, unlike motocross, points are not paid for an individual moto. It's the same thing with a Triple Crown in Supercross, where your lowest score is basically, what you get, and then at the end of the night, they tally it up and give you an overall result and then pay out points. That's exactly how this works too. So it's Olympic scoring on the evening. Jett Lawrence went 1-2 for 3 points, and Ken Roczen went 3-1 for 4 points. So Jett obviously has a lower score, and because it was a double points race, the 25 points he would normally win was actually 50 points, so literally nothing changed. Jett Lawrence letting Ken Roczen go by changed absolutely nothing about the result. He still got 50 points. Roczen still got 44 for the double points in second place. Jett Lawrence still won $100,000 as the grand prize for winning the SMX race, and nothing changed. The only thing that changed was the position in the final race. And, Roczen winning that doesn't get him more money or more points or anything like that. It maybe gives him a little bit of a boost, but that was it. So then afterwards, Jett Lawrence, on the podium and then to us in the post-race press conference, basically said that he was trying to work out the math, and he was seeing where Chase was, and he was seeing where Kenny was, and he allegedly thought that he needed to, or if he let Kenny go, it would help his situation. Because Chase Sexton was and still is the points leader in this championship, and he thought if he let Ken Roczen go by, that it would move Roczen ahead of Sexton in the overall standings for the race. Roczen, for finishing second at the Chicago race, you would get 44 points, and for finishing third overall, you get 40 points. So it'd be a 4-point swing in the favor of Jett against Chase Sexton specifically, or so he thought. That was not how the math worked out at all. Roczen was going to get second overall regardless of which, because Roczen's 3-2 scores with a better second moto would beat Sexton's 2-3 scores with a worse second moto. So they would tie, but tiebreaker goes to the better second moto, as it always has in motocross. So because of that, Jett just got the math wrong and let Kenny go by it. That's what he said, at least. Now, there's a lot of speculation afterwards of what maybe ended up happening, and everyone has an opinion, like I said. A lot of people are saying, oh, Jett just couldn't hang with Kenny, and instead of fighting him, he decided to let him go, and they don't really like that in the spirit of competition, and yada, yada, yada. And there's some people that think, oh, Jett, just straight up knew he didn't need to beat Kenny, so why fight it, etc., etc., etc. I think that whichever way you slice this, first of all, I think a lot of people are blowing it a little too far out of proportion. I don't think it's really that big of a deal what he ended up doing, but I digress. Whichever way you slice it, it was a smart move. It really was. Even if he did the math wrong about Sexton and Roczen, it was still a smart move in the sense that he had to work less hard, basically, to get the same result. To let Ken Roczen go and lower his lap times by a few seconds and just ride a comfortable pace and finish second in that race, he still got 50 points. He still got $100,000. He worked less hard to get the exact same result. So to me, I think that's just like a straight up big brain move. He did the math wrong, but he still got basically exactly what he needed to do right. He still got Roczen between him and Sexton overall, which was going to happen anyway. And he did not have to break his back trying to beat Ken Roczen and potentially crash. So I think it's a little bit silly how many people are like, God, Jett's so stupid. I mean, he did exactly what I think I would do in that situation if I knew the math and that's how it worked out. Like I said, he got the math wrong with the Sexton and Roczen thing, but he definitely got it dead on with him and Roczen. He knew that he did not need to beat Roczen to get the exact same result. So I think it was, a smart move by him. Now we could get into the weeds of, is it fair? Because in motocross, you should always compete and never give up and should be a battle for the win and stuff like that. But these are the rules as they were laid out. This is more on SMX and their rules, in my opinion, than on Jett Lawrence. Jett Lawrence is playing by the rules, and by winning or finishing second, he would have had the same result. So, I mean, I'd ask any one of you if you could, get the exact same result. Let's say, someone says, I'll give you $100,000 if you ran 2 miles or $100,000 if you ran 1 mile. There are like 3 people on this earth that are going to run 2 miles, and it's probably because they're distance runners and they think it's funny or something like that. Most people will elect to run the shorter distance, and that's basically what Jett Lawrence decided to do. Decided, I'm going to get the same thing for doing less work, basically. He still had to run solid lap times to not let Chase get him, but they were gone. They were not anywhere near Chase Sexton at that point in time, and he knew he could settle into a much more comfortable pace than potentially fight Ken Roczen to the death and crash and lose all the points and the money and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now he sits 2 points behind Chase Sexton going into the final round of the championship. Roczen sits 10 points back and obviously is a little bit perturbed by this. He's a little bit fired up. Went on the Pulp MX show last night and even kind of explained how he just felt like, Jett maybe didn't handle it the right way and that like he didn't need the gift or anything like that. And what he said was a bummer for him about it was that he felt like that was going to be a really awesome moment. Like he felt like he could catch Jett Lawrence and actually make it, a sick battle for the win. And it would be like kind of like a cool moment for him and obviously the fans and the sport as well to see like this epic battle for the win. But I feel like even if Roczen did catch him and they did start battling, at some point Jett Lawrence probably would have realized it didn't matter anyway and not fought him as hard anyway. It may have looked less obvious than just waving him by, but I think that Jett would have still done the same thing basically. It just wouldn't have been, an obvious wave, I guess. But to me, I think the silliest thing of all of this is how many people say like, Roczen was going to get him anyway so easily. Like, it's so stupid that Jett decided to just wave him by. Like, it looks really soft and da-da-da-da-da. To me, I think that that's like the most tired take of it all because the people saying that, in my opinion, then did not watch 22 motos of Pro Motocross and did not watch the first moto of SMX at Chicagoland. Because Jett Lawrence clapped the cheeks in Pro Motocross and did it again in the first moto of SMX here at Chicago. If Jett Lawrence wanted to outright fight and try to beat Ken Roczen, I think he would have done it. I really do. And I think it's like ridiculous that so many people just assume that because he decided to let him by that he was fading and getting tired. The guy that won 22 straight motos was fading and getting tired. Are you kidding me? Like, that's ridiculous. So, in my opinion, I think that Jett did probably the right thing overall, just maybe with the wrong intention, and it's not really a big deal. But obviously people think it's a big deal. I did hear that there was, some people trying to maybe get him penalized. And in the rule book, there's not really anything that specifically outlines like waving somebody by, but it does have a few things in there about trying your hardest throughout the distance of a race. And I know that there are some rules in there about like preconceived planning. Like if Jett went into the moto with Honda and they talked about it and they said, if Kenny is right behind you, 100% just let him by. Like that's one thing that you can point to as being illegal in the rule book because there's some things about fixing the race beforehand and stuff like that. I don't think any of that happened. And if it did, I don't think there's any way you could prove it unless you were in the Honda truck with them and had video recording of it, but no one does and no one will. So, yeah, I think it is what it is. And now what we get is the final round of this championship with 10 points between those guys and 9 points between a win because it's triple points at the SMX finale. And so Roczen could get super fired up from this like he sounds like he is and go to LA and win. And if Sexton finishes second, he's the champion. So, or if Jett finishes second, I should say, he's the champion. Sexton is 10 points up on him. Roczen needs to outscore him by 10, 11 points basically. But it's 9 between first and second. And yeah, I mean, game on basically. This is going to be really, really fun to watch because it seems to have ignited Roczen a little bit. I think Chase Sexton's pretty fired up that Jett was willing to hurt Sexton as a teammate in this regard. I don't think it's like, you know, that big of a deal because obviously Chase is leaving the team and there's already a little bit of like kind of, I don't want to say bad blood, but just like some frustration between those two anyway. So I think that Chase already was kind of fired up and this fires him up some more. And it adds some drama. And I think if you're Jett Lawrence, you maybe stoke the flames when you didn't need to. I think if you come off the track after that race and say simply like, I knew I had the win in hand, I didn't need to beat Kenny, and I just really didn't want to put myself on the ground, it looks way different aesthetically. But for him to like go in and start talking about the math of it and all that stuff, which he very well may have been thinking about, it definitely makes it look a little bit more like I was trying to fix the race on purpose to benefit myself and hurt Chase Sexton and yada, 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 which I personally don't really care about, but some people obviously do. And that's why I said like the aesthetics of it probably look a little bit bad. So that's my opinion of it. I know everyone else has a different opinion and will definitely voice it and probably complain about Jett and all this stuff like that. But I don't know. To me, I think that a lot of other people in this situation would be credited as like, wow, that was a big brain move. He knew he would go 1-2, win the overall, get 50 points, get $100,000, maximize his potential, and he didn't have to try as hard. But for some reason, a lot of people are just ripping into Jett Lawrence for this, and I don't know. I don't feel like it's really deserved because I felt like it was ultimately a smart decision to not risk it by the rules as they are laid out to play. If you don't like the rules, it's on SMX. They are the ones that should change it so that it's points per moto or something like that moving forward. Instead, we get 6 scores from the 3 rounds instead of just 3. It's the way they laid it out. They wanted to do Olympic scoring. They wanted to do this situation where all the way through the, you know, by the end of the night, that's when the points get paid out and you don't pay per moto and yada, yada, yada. So maybe that's something that changes next year so we don't have another situation like this. But that's definitely the rules as they are laid out right now. And I think that's why we saw what we saw on Saturday night. So again, that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think, and thanks for tuning in to watch another video here on Start Your Systems recapping the SMX race at Chicago. Going to LA this weekend, very excited about it. Really keen to see how this championship shakes out. Even 250 class is really dang good with Shimoda, Hunter Lawrence, and Hayden Deegan all 7 points apart. So that is truly a winner-take-all situation this weekend. And man, who knows what's going to happen right there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks, guys, again for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, as always, and appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.